Minneapolis, known as the largest city in the state of Minnesota, stands proudly in the southeastern region of the state, nestled along the gentle currents of the Mississippi River. With a population exceeding 429,000, Minneapolis is a vibrant mosaic where stunning natural beauty meets a thriving urban landscape. It's a city bursting with cultural landmarks, endless entertainment options, and a world-class education system, making it an ideal destination for students and travelers from around the globe. Yet behind its towering skyscrapers, the elegant stone arch bridge spanning the river, and the iconic skyway system connecting downtown's bustling core, there lies another side of Minneapolis. Amidst the soulful notes of jazz drifting through the streets, quiet, overlooked corners tell a story of struggle. Over 1,000 people live on sidewalks or in small tents, a stark reflection of the city's complex history of social segregation and an intense drive for development that hasn't always benefited all its residents. For a deeper look into this complex duality, both the inspiring and the challenging sides, let's explore Minneapolis. Founded in 1856, Minneapolis rose to become one of the United States' most prominent industrial centers. Over the years, the city became the country's main hub for flour milling. Today, Minneapolis is not only a thriving city, but also the county seat of Hennepin County, located near the center of Minnesota, close to the eastern border. The city stretches across both banks of the upper Mississippi River and sits adjacent to St. Paul, Minnesota's state capital. Together, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and their surrounding communities form the Twin Cities metropolitan area, a region home to approximately 3.69 million people. Now, often referred to as the City of Lakes, Minneapolis has shifted its industrial resources toward a focus on trade, finance, and the railroad industry. Alongside Seattle, Minneapolis ranks as one of the most literate cities in America. While the quality of life here is exceptionally high, a sharp divide exists within its population, an economic and social gap that stands as one of Minneapolis's most pressing challenges in the 21st century. Minneapolis carries a long history of structural racism, with racial disparities permeating nearly every facet of society. When white settlers displaced indigenous populations in the 19th century, they seized land, establishing a foundation of inequality that persists today. This control over land grew into a wide socioeconomic gap that only deepened over the decades. As the city's flour milling industry moved to the East Coast and the local economy faltered, racial discrimination worsened. Through racially restrictive covenants, Minneapolis enforced residential segregation that impacted property values, home ownership, generational wealth, housing security, and health equity. Realities that continue to shape life in the city today. According to David Hewitt, Hennepin County's manager for housing stability, around 1,300 people in the area are homeless, roughly 1 in every 2,700 people. Data from January 2023 shows about 5,000 homeless individuals across the region, encompassing both Minneapolis and St. Paul, a number that has remained largely unchanged since 2007. This represents about 2% of those living in poverty and approximately 0.3% of the Twin Cities' total population, a homelessness rate about 2/3 higher than the national average. In 2018, half of the homeless in the Twin Cities earned less than $600 per month, placing them among the poorest 5% of the population. Living under conditions of severe poverty and social stigma, the homeless in Minneapolis endure extraordinary vulnerability. 1 in 4 adults experiencing homelessness in Minnesota has faced physical or sexual assault. At a more chronic level, the lives of the homeless are often marked by challenges like substance abuse, unmanaged mental health conditions, and tragically high rates of mortality. Despite efforts from local government and countless volunteers from nonprofit organizations, between 2017 and 2021, homeless individuals using shelter services in Minneapolis died at a rate 3 times higher than that of the general Minnesota population of the same age group. Minneapolis, like many major cities, comes alive after dark with a bustling nightlife scene. Bars, nightclubs, and restaurants teem with locals and tourists alike, offering a range of entertainment and escapism. Alongside this nightlife, as in countless cities worldwide, prostitution has long been an inseparable part of the city's nocturnal pulse. According to the effects of prostitution on businesses in North Minneapolis, around 30 to 40 sex workers are visible on the streets of North Minneapolis at any given time, though some estimates suggest the number could be in the hundreds. Much like the homeless population, sex workers face high risks of violence, exploitation, and trafficking. For years, violence against sex workers in Minneapolis has often gone unnoticed, relegated to the shadows. In 2023, however, a series of tragic murders of sex workers by serial killers shocked the community, though these stories initially drew little attention. It was only when nonprofits like the Sex Workers Outreach Project raised their voices that the incidents received public outcry. In 2021,
GOP strategist's sex trafficking allegations.
A major political scandal erupted when Anton Lazaro, then chair of the Minnesota Republican Party, was implicated in a high-profile sex trafficking case involving a 19-year-old woman, further exposing the dark reality of exploitation within the state. Prostitution has a long history in Minneapolis, dating back to the city's early days along the Mississippi River. As the milling industry flourished, so did the brothels, which became sources of income for the city, threading this trade into the fabric of its past. Safety is always a key consideration for visitors and residents of any city, and the United States presents a paradox of being perceived as both safe and high in crime rates. Minneapolis has its own complex safety profile. In 2023, the city reported approximately 5,713 crimes per 100,000 residents, a crime rate 138% higher than the state average and 143% above the national average. Though crime rates had been declining before the pandemic, these numbers still rank Minneapolis as a city with a higher than average crime rate compared to other urban areas in the U.S. Minnesota's history with crime runs deep, stretching back to the Great Depression when the state gained notoriety as a refuge for gangsters. Among the most infamous figures was Kate Barker, better known as Ma Barker, the mother of several American criminals, including her son, Fred Barker. Alongside the legendary mobster Alvin Karpis, they formed the Barker Karpis Gang, a notorious group responsible for a spree of robberies, kidnappings, and murders. In 1933, they kidnapped William Ham, a wealthy brewery owner, demanding and receiving a ransom for his release. This event, along with their other exploits, cemented their place in Minnesota's dark criminal lore. Minnesota has become one of the epicenters of the opioid overdose crisis in the United States. Beginning in the 1990s, the widespread prescription of pain-relieving medications marked the start of this epidemic, with opioid abuse and overdose rates steadily climbing at an alarming rate each year. Today, opioid misuse and fatal overdoses are skyrocketing. Data from the Minnesota Department of Health reveals that non-fatal overdoses treated in hospitals, primarily involving synthetic opioids like fentanyl, have nearly tripled between 2020 and 2022. Fentanyl, a synthetic opioid originally developed for severe pain management, is up to 50 times more potent than heroin and as much as 100 times stronger than morphine. This potency has fueled a surge in overdose fatalities, with Minnesota recording 560 fentanyl-related deaths in 2020. That number climbed sharply to 834 in 2021, and tragically, an average of 4 Minnesotans now die from overdoses each day. Minneapolis has experienced a similar rise, with opioid overdose deaths increasing by 130% between 2017 and 2021. The devastation of the opioid crisis extends far beyond numbers. Across Minnesota, countless families have lost loved ones to overdose, while others struggle with the painful reality of addiction's ripple effects. For many, opioid dependence has cost them custody of their children, jobs, and even their freedom. What began in cities like Minneapolis and St. Paul has spread to communities statewide, underscoring the vast impact of this crisis. The opioid epidemic has left deep scars on Minnesota, affecting lives, families, and entire communities.